Welcome to our deep dive today. It's going to be a fascinating one, I think. We're going to be looking at rare psychological disorders. These are the kinds of conditions where, like, perception bends and reality kind of takes a back seat. We've got some pretty wild case studies and insights from experts. You ready to get into, like, the stranger side of the human mind?
Absolutely. These conditions, even though they're not common, they give us a really unique way to examine our brains. All the intricate workings and, that delicate balance of perception, identity, reality, the whole thing.
Yeah. Okay, so let's just jump right into it. Let's start with the condition that takes this whole idea of, faking it to a whole new level. Munchausen syndrome.
Oh, yeah.
So this disorder is basically fabricating or exaggerating an illness. And people do this for attention, for sympathy. And it's interesting, the name actually comes from an 18th century baron.
Mm-hmm.
He was known for embellishing his life stories. Like, he would come up with these crazy tales.
Oh, wow.
Pretty fitting namesake, huh?
It really is. It's that same kind of, wanting validation, but instead of like made up adventures, it's through these fabricated illnesses. And what's really interesting is they often have like a ton of medical knowledge, enough to convince, real
Yeah,
doctors.
you would think that they were like, a doctor or a nurse or something.
Exactly. It's like a calculated performance. They're masters of deception, but it's all driven by this really deep psychological need.
Yeah, and, they become like these self-taught medical experts. It's kind of impressive in a way, but it's like they're doing it to keep up this facade, this lie.
Yay.
And there's a darker side to this too. Some people with Munchausen syndrome will actually harm themselves to make their illness seem more believable. It's pretty disturbing when you think about the lengths that they'll go to.
It really is. And then you have this even more disturbing version, Munchausen by proxy. This is where like a caregiver, usually a parent, they actually make another person sick,
Oh, God.
usually their child. And it's all for attention and this like warped sense of control.
Wow, that's really, really disturbing.
Yeah, it's especially insidious because the victims are often, very vulnerable. They can't speak up for themselves.
It's hard to even wrap your mind around, someone manipulating another person's well-being like that, just to get attention.
Mm.
What could even be the motivation for that?
It really makes you think about societal pressures, this need for validation, and the extremes people will go to get it. But let's maybe change gears a little bit
Okay.
and talk about another condition. It's pretty intriguing. Body integrity identity disorder, BIID.
Okay, I've heard of this one. This is the one where people want to amputate a healthy limb, right?
Yeah, or they want to have a sensory impairment.
So strange.
It is. It's a real paradox. And it's important to know this isn't about attention like Munchausen. This is about feeling like a part of their body doesn't belong, even though it's perfectly healthy.
That must be so hard to live with that feeling.
It is. They believe that if they change their body in this really drastic way, they'll feel whole, like it'll relieve their suffering.
This is such a complex condition.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember reading that a lot of times the desire for amputation focuses on the left side of the body.
Yeah, that's right.
Makes you wonder if there's like a neurological connection there.
It's a really intriguing asymmetry. But BIID also presents a really difficult ethical dilemma. Should a doctor ever help someone fulfill this desire?
Oh, that's such a tough question.
It is, even when you know they're suffering.
Yeah.
And they're mentally capable of making that choice. It really makes us grapple with the concepts of bodily autonomy, medical intervention, how far should we go?
Definitely makes you rethink your ideas about self-perception and, feeling whole in your own body.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on now to a condition that I always find kind of creepy, Cotard Delusion.
Oh, yes. Walking corpse syndrome.
Yeah, I mean, the name says it all. This is where people believe that they're dead.
A walking corpse. Or sometimes even that they don't exist at all.
Yeah, and it can manifest in so many ways. Like, people might neglect basic self-care.
Right. Or they withdraw from everyone.
It's really unsettling.
Yeah. There's this really interesting historical anecdote about a woman in Switzerland back in the 18th century. She was so convinced that she was dead that she wanted to be buried alive.
Oh my gosh.
It just shows how powerful these delusions can be. It becomes their reality. They think they're dead, so they act accordingly. It doesn't matter how illogical it seems to everyone else.
And here's the part I always find strange. Some people with Cotard Delusion are actually comforted by horror imagery.
That's right.
Like, they see themselves in these depictions of zombies and vampires.
Almost like they're trying to validate their delusion. Like they're looking for something external to make sense of it all.
Yeah, I guess we all have that need to find meaning, even when our reality is completely distorted.
It's a reminder that our brains are always trying to make sense of things, even if it means creating stories that defy logic.
It's definitely a fascinating paradox. Okay, let's move on to another delusion. This one strikes at the core of our relationships. Capgras Delusion.
Yeah, sometimes called imposter syndrome.
This is the one where people believe that their loved ones have been replaced by identical imposters.
Exactly. And it's not a case of mistaken identity. They can recognize the person, but they feel no emotional connection.
Right. It's like their brain is saying, this person looks like my wife, but something just feels wrong.
Right.
It's like deeply unsettling.
Yeah, it can cause a lot of strain in relationships, a lot of paranoia.
So it's not just people, right? It can happen with places and objects too.
That's right. Their house, their car, even their pet. It really impacts their whole world.
It's like their entire reality has been manipulated somehow. It must be so isolating.
It is. This delusion really shows us how our brains create our sense of reality. It combines visual recognition with emotional responses. And when that connection is broken, things get very strange.
We've covered some pretty strange and unsettling stuff in this first part of our deep dive. We're just scratching the surface of these rare psychological disorders.
Definitely. It's interesting that, with Capgras, it's all about like this distrust, this paranoia, but there's another condition that's kind of the opposite, where it creates this false sense of familiarity.
Oh, yeah, you're talking about Fregoli Delusion, right? That's the one where it's like they think different people are all actually the same person, just like in disguise.
Exactly. So Capgras, you're mistaking the familiar for something foreign. Fregoli, you're seeing the foreign as familiar. Like there's this one entity hiding behind all these different faces. It's wild. Both of these conditions, though, they really show us this intricate connection between how we perceive things, recognize things, and then the emotional processing that goes on in our brains.
Yeah, you would think that recognizing the people you love would be like super straightforward, right?
You would think so.
But these conditions show us that it's way more complex than we realize.
Right. And it's important to understand that these delusions, they're not the same as like facial blindness,
Yeah.
prosopagnosia. People with Capgras and Fregoli, they can recognize faces, but the emotional part of it is messed up.
Oh, okay.
So with Capgras, there's no feeling there, which is why they come up with this imposter explanation. And then with Fregoli, it's almost like they're overcompensating, creating this connection where there shouldn't be one.
It's like they're seeing the same person everywhere they go. Maybe even like a persecutor or something.
It could be, yeah. It's like when you have a song stuck in your head,
Yeah.
and then suddenly you hear it everywhere.
Oh, yeah, totally.
But in this case, it's a person. And the tune is either suspicion or this like creepy familiarity.
Ooh, that's a good analogy.
Yeah.
It's like our brains can get fixated on an idea, and then we start seeing it everywhere, even if it's not really there.
That's exactly it. And neuroscientists have actually found evidence of this disconnect in the brain.
Really? What have they found?
Well, they think there might be this disruption happening between the part of the brain that recognizes faces and the part that handles emotions.
Ah, so like the wires are crossed, you see the face, you recognize it, but that emotional tag is missing, or it's going to the wrong place.
Right. It's not enough just to see the face. You have to connect it to a feeling. And if you can't do that, you end up with these really weird perceptions.
It makes you wonder how much of what we think is reality is actually just our emotions, memories, interpretations.
It's all mixed up together. It's not like our brains are just passively taking in information. We're actively creating our own reality.
Fascinating. Okay, let's go back to body integrity identity disorder for a minute. We were talking before about that ethical dilemma.
Yeah.
Should doctors ever help someone with BIID amputate a limb?
It's such a tough question. It really challenges what we think about bodily autonomy and what medicine is for. On the one hand, you have this person's right to choose what happens to their body, and they really believe this is going to help them. But then you have this medical obligation to do no harm, to preserve health.
Yeah, it's like, where do you draw the line?
Right. It's this intersection of personal values, medical ethics, societal norms. I think the first step is really just good communication between the individual, their family, and the doctors. And you need a lot of empathy and a willingness to see things from a different perspective.
It's definitely not an easy situation. Okay, let's go back to Cotard Delusion for a second. This is the one where people believe they're dead. It's so strange.
Yeah.
It really makes you question what it means to be self-aware, the connection between mind and body.
One of the most interesting things about this delusion is how it affects behavior. They might stop taking care of themselves, stop eating, isolate themselves, all because they think they're already dead.
So their actions are matching their delusion.
Yeah.
like a physical manifestation of their belief. And then some people find comfort in horror movies, zombies,
Yeah,
vampires.
it's like they're looking for proof in these external sources, like trying to find something that makes sense of this messed up reality.
Yeah, I guess we all try to find meaning even when things are confusing. It's just that in this case, it's really tragic. Speaking of messed up realities, let's go back to Capgras Delusion. We talked about that feeling of disconnect with loved ones.
Yeah, and a lot of times it goes beyond just the visual recognition. They might say that the imposters just feels off in a way they can't explain.
So it's like their gut is telling them something's wrong, even if they don't know exactly what it is.
Right. It shows how complex our brains are, how much we rely on all these subtle cues in our social interactions. And emotions are a huge part of that. When that emotional connection is gone, even a familiar face can seem suspicious.
So we've covered a lot in this segment. Imposter syndrome, false familiarity, all these different ways our brains can misinterpret the world around us.
It's a good reminder that the brain is amazing, but it's not perfect. It can make mistakes. And those mistakes can lead to some really strange experiences. Things that challenge our understanding of who we are and what we believe is real.
And we are back for the final part of our deep dive. This has been a pretty wild ride so far.
Yeah.
Looking at all these rare psychological disorders, all these strange ways that our minds can, like, misinterpret reality.
It really has.
So you ready to wrap things up?
Yeah, let's do it. We've covered some fascinating conditions. I mean, each one gives us a different perspective on what it means to be human.
Totally. Okay, so before we move on to anything else, I want to go back to Capgras Delusion one more time.
Yeah.
We talked about that imposter phenomenon, how people feel no emotional connection, like something is off about their loved ones.
Right.
But our source material also talks about this related delusion, Fregoli Delusion.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to hear more about that. Like, how do these two conditions connect?
So think of it this way. With Capgras, you're seeing doubles, like copies where they shouldn't be. But with Fregoli, you're seeing one person hiding behind a bunch of different faces.
Oh, okay, see.
So people with Fregoli delusion, they believe that everyone they meet is actually the same person, like in disguise, even if those people look and act totally different.
Oh, wow. So it's like the Capgras is all about suspicion, paranoia, and Fregoli is about this, like, false sense of familiarity. It's almost like they're being targeted by this one person.
Right, like they're in a spy movie or something.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
crazy. So both of these conditions, though, they really show us how perception, recognition, and emotions, they're all connected in the brain.
Yeah, it's not as simple as it seems.
Like recognizing your loved ones. You would think that would be automatic, but there's actually all this complex stuff happening in the brain.
And when that gets messed up, it can have some really strange effects.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, what are some of the key things you hope people listening will remember?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is just how amazing the human brain is, but also how adaptable it is. You know, these rare disorders show us that even the most basic things, like our sense of self, our relationships, how we see the world, all of that can be changed by what's happening in our brains.
It really makes you realize that what we think of as normal or real might not be the same for everyone.
Exactly. There's no one right way to experience the world. And I hope this deep dive has made people a little bit more curious about the human mind, a little more empathetic to people who see things differently.
Yeah, I think you've done a great job of that. It's been so fascinating to learn about all these conditions, the power of belief, how fragile our perception can be, that connection between our mind and our body. It's all connected.
And maybe this will inspire someone listening to look at the world a little differently, question their assumptions, embrace the fact that everyone's experience is unique.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this exploration of the human mind, all the strange things it can do. Until next time, keep those brains buzzing.